No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. And today I'm in here with the one and only legend, Sonny from P.O.D. How you doing, man?
What's up, homie?
Chilling, man. How you
I
doing?
like that.
What? You don't think you're ready for the legend title, or what was it?
Not yet. Still got some living to do.
I don't know. I feel like one narrative, one style of music that is like kind of, it's always been on the fringe of hip hop to a certain extent, but I'm always interested in exploring it. It's just kind of the combination of metal and rock music, and I feel like you are like a super important figure in that throughout your career, and kind of goes under analyzed, you know?
A little bit, but we're no, I appreciate that, first of all, but I don't think we were ever meant to go mainstream, you know what I mean? It just kind of happened.
That's how you feel?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it is weird when you think about it, just in a general sense. Like, it's such an obvious idea to combine rock music and rap music. You know, there's like clear similarities and stuff, but it feels like the combination at times throughout its history, it's been done so badly at times, or done in such ways that it feels like it kind of maybe turned the culture as a whole off to it. And you always wonder when the culture might be fully ready to embrace stuff that combines the two. I feel like you guys were super early on realizing that was going to be part of music to come.
Yeah. I think, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, you know what I mean, when the musics keep coming around, but a lot of people jump on trends, and you said it exactly. Because I think hip hop is so authentic, and even rock and roll in its beautiful form. But then when people just try to jump on the trend and they're not really about either. How can you mash it up so that it is authentic? Right. So a lot of guys, you know, they jumped on the boat, and then they started putting out records, and then it's that thing that everybody just said, I'm kind of over this. Right. Instead of giving it the credit that it deserves.
I hear you. Take me back to San Diego, you as a kid before this band even came to exist, because it existed before you even joined, right?
It wasn't. It was more of a thrash metal, like 3-piece. My cousin's a drummer. Okay. Marco's the guitar player. Still same. So
it didn't really take shape before you joined.
Right. Okay. I think what had happened was, you know, we all have different interests in music, and that's kind of where that's where we blend. But they were doing something. They wanted to do something a little different, and I was more into hip hop and reggae music, stuff like that. I grew up in a rock and roll family, but when you kind of become a teenager or whatever, you kind of just find your own thing.
You want to rebel a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of found myself a little bit more in conscious music, whether it was hip hop, whether it was reggae music, and it was because it had substance. Whereas to me, rock and roll was just more, you know, it was rock and roll, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
What kind of stuff were your parents playing around the house?
I mean, it was like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, that kind of stuff, good old stuff. But then once I started to hear like a band called The Police, which did mix kind of reggae sounds, English reggae sounds. Yeah. Shout out Sting. So then that was like, okay, there's a little bit more soul into this, you know?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like, if you're a kid, when did you guys form? Or when did you guys really start
92
going?
is when 92. P.O.D. formed, yeah.
I mean, by 92, if you were a young, somewhat angry or you know, angstful young man, a lot of that stuff that was really popular during the 70s, 80s, I feel like that was starting to really not appeal to you at a certain point, especially if you're kind of like angry. Like if you have that in you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's so much angst as just, it was just a way to get, you know, I guess a way to get things out, you know what I mean? Right. But I always, I grew up listening to rock and roll, like I said, because of my family, but I thought, you know, punk and that kind of stuff was more of a white music, if that makes sense, like a Sex Pistols, an English kind of punk. And I'm like, well, I don't relate to those cats, so why would I listen to that? Right. It wasn't until I noticed or recognized bands like Suicidal Tendencies, you know, bands of color, and then especially the Bad Brains, obviously, 4 black dudes in a punk rock band. Right. To me, it was 4 black dudes in a white kind of scene.
Oh yeah.
So then to me it was like, what do they know that I don't know?
Because that's what, even as a kid, like by the time I started to get into hardcore and punk and everything, it's like the Bad Brains had already happened many years before, but you always were so fascinated by like, how the fuck did these guys end up here, and how were they so good, so separate in many ways, but still capable of really like entrancing this audience? Like they must have had such self-confidence and self-belief to just insert themselves like that,
I think they did, but I think once they realized, once they started, HR and them started getting more of like the Rasta culture and roots, it was authentic. But it was, when do we always know what we're doing? Are you just kind of going with the flow, and then you're just kind of saying, okay, well, this is what I want to do. So I think they were being the Bad Brains, but then once they kind of took on this whole new identity and culture and belief system, then it just started to mesh into what they were already doing, which, makes it authentic.
It's funny because nowadays I feel like people would perceive that more as like a missionary effort to some extent. Like they were trying to come in and like convert people to Rastafari.
True. But that was the same thing with Marley as well. They were they were Jamaican cats, but they were doing American soul, American music. But it wasn't until he, kind of adopted this Rasta culture that it was like, okay. So again, authentic. It wasn't like I'm on this mission to do this. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of how it was with P.O.D. as well. It was like me just discovering my faith. It wasn't like I'm going to go and convert the world. It was just like, I'm just trying to figure out how this rolls, coming from whatever I was into at the time, or just trying to stay out of trouble. Finding my faith was like, okay, well, it wasn't like I was saying because I have all this experience and I'm saying because I know everything, or I believe I know everything. It's like, no, this is real to me in this moment, and I'm discovering it. So why not talk about it in real time? You know what I mean?
So were you going through the process of finding your faith at the same time that you're joining the band?
Oh, for sure. It's the only reason why I even joined. My mom had passed away of leukemia when I was 19, and then at that point, because it's not like I grew up saying, I listen to all kinds of music and stuff, but I'm not the guy that's always wants to be in front of the light or the camera or in the front. I'm more I'm the guy in the back that kind of just gets it done. You know what I mean? So when my mom passed away, that's when I kind of decided it was time to grow up a little bit, or just maybe if anything, it was like
you were trying to find yourself at that time.
And if anything, do what I believe she would want me to do. So that was okay. I gotta, not get into trouble. I gotta, I just gotta make better decisions in my life.
You were getting in trouble before that?
No, I'm good at not getting in trouble. But I hang around a lot of people that do.
Right.
So, like I said, I'm just there because that's my family. And then, but it was just kind of, deciding the time, like, okay, these are my choices. If I come from a neighborhood where your choices are limited, you're either selling drugs or you're going to join a gang, or, my choices are limited.
So and were you very much tempted by the criminal element as a kid, or?
Not personally. I wasn't afraid of it. A lot of my friends were already doing it, but it wasn't till I realized later that, again, listening to a lot of reggae music, which was a lot of it is, when you listen to old roots music, it's a lot of, it's biblically inspired. There's a lot of scripture, right? Even Marley's music, most people think that's a Marley quote. It's like, no, that's actually scripture that he's quoting. But I was listening to a lot of reggae music, so it was making me this kind of peaceful, even, amongst my situation, I was still this kind of peaceful cat at heart, you know what I mean? And then I realized later in reading scripture that the Bible does say that the word of God will never return void. So even in my mind and heart, when I wasn't really looking for it, at some point these words were still speaking peace to my soul. So every time we would do something stupid, or my friends would whatever, it was just like I knew the difference between right and wrong. Did we always do right? No, but it's like it's kind of like you're in this situation. What am I gonna do?
Right. So you joined the band, and was that like a tricky process? And do you take on like a leadership role almost? Were you the one who was motivated, or did they already have their own momentum going?
No, they were doing stuff in the streets in the neighborhood, but it was just backyard parties, stuff like that. And but it wasn't until my mom passed away. Here I am. I found out later that my cousin, the drummer, he actually had asked me to be in the band just so that I would stay out of trouble and stay on kind of on this path that I was on.
Wow.
So I had no idea what I was doing. You know what I mean? I had already, crossed boundaries with a lot of different musics and stuff. But like I said, it was never, I didn't grow up saying I want to be in a band. It was more like, okay, they asked me to do it. Why can't I do it? If I'm going through this change in my life, and why can't I pick up this microphone and scream some positive things? You know what I mean? So, and then a few things did happen where I thought it was kind of a spiritual confirmation that maybe I should give it a shot. And then we did, but again, never thought we'd leave San Diego. It was just more part of my change process. I think when people saw me trying to live out my faith, that was strange. Right. At least in the streets sense, my friends. And then when it was like Sonny jumped in this, in the band, that's out of his character as well. So it was just me trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing,
But you joining a band, were a lot of people from your culture looking at you like you were doing some weird shit, some white boy shit? Or was it kind of an accepted part of the culture around there?
My cousin, I mean, we're in San Diego. There's a lot of, there's brothers, there's Mexicans playing metal music, and I wasn't really like a big metal fan, but so it wasn't like unusual. You know what I'm saying?
I'm forgetting that there is a very strong strain of like metal and rock appreciation within the Mexican community.
Oh yeah, for sure. So it wasn't like it was strange. I think as like I said, my cousin was already in the band, and when they would play parties or whatever, we would go, and we were just kind of learning that. I think when I say we, just me and like my homies, we were kind of learning, well, okay, this is what my cousin loves to do, and he's part of the crew. It's like, well, we'll back him up and we'll go. And so we were kind of learning even the mosh pit, all that kind of stuff. But
that was kind of new to you at the time.
It was kind of new, but it was fun. You know what I mean? But even when P.O.D. first started, we used to play with all kinds of different bands. So all of a sudden you play at a show, and all of a sudden you have like you're playing with some white power band. All of a sudden you have these skinhead Nazis up in the.
What was the policy when that would be happening?
There's no policy.
It's not required that you beat the shit out of them?
Oh, yeah. I guess it just happens.
Because I feel like, that's I just talked about on the last interview I did, but I grew up in a scene going to hardcore shows and shit up in the East Coast where, I mean, if you came through with a swastika on or any kind of Nazi shit, you get the shit beat out of you like automatically. Yeah. Well, I don't know if people care as
I don't think
much.
In the South, I don't think they represented like that. I think it was just, you just knew. And so, again, if other friends of mine that were in other bands and they were playing with this band or that band, we just knew to posse up and roll to those shows and just be there if anything popped off. You know what I mean?
Right. But it wasn't like a 100% guarantee, like if you saw some skinheads that you guys were going to have to get in with them?
It happens, but it wasn't like it was our mission.
I feel like if there's a Nazi at a hardcore show, it's such an aggressive thing that it's like inevitable that something has to happen.
Like I said, they weren't flying it, so it's more like
more low key.
You just because again, San Diego, and even at the shows we were playing, you had more people of color, which to this day, when going to the East Coast or when playing, I still look for that. I still look for the spice in the crowd. You know what I mean? Instead of playing, say, maybe Midwest somewhere where it's kind of like your typical audience.
But what, you get excited if you see a significant percentage of people of color in the audience?
Always. On this tour, when you see people of color, when you see especially black cats and black sisters, when you see them at a rock show in your crowd, I don't know, it's just something about it that says I'm doing something right.
Right, because I feel like metal and aggressive music has always kind of struggled to appeal to that audience. Like there's definitely a percentage of the of that demographic that fucks with it, but it's always kind of been like a smaller percentage.
I think it's still that way. I mean, that's why I as a teenager, it wasn't my thing. I mean, I knew of hardcore bands and and there was punk bands, stuff like that, but it wasn't until, like I said, I listened to guys that had soul or bands of color. But even now, like even in the world that I'm in, I still feel like, whatever. We had our shine for a second, but I still feel like we're somewhat in a white rock and roll type world. And so my band, we don't have those elements. We don't culturally, we don't have those elements. Musically, we don't have those elements. We have too much. There's just too much soul. We have too much. We just have too much soul.
Right.
You can dance to our music even if you don't like it. You know what I mean?
From the very beginning, was that the plan? Like, did you always want to merge rap music and rock, or did it just kind of happen?
It just happened. It's just because an appreciation, you know, because we're fans. We were hip hop fans. We were reggae fans, punk fans.
Was that just the only way that you knew how to do
That's
vocals? It just came to you the most naturally?
Yeah. Well, I think I was easier with just trying to rap. You know what I mean? And then it wasn't. And then it was just, again, learning as I was going, like, okay, learning how to scream, learning how to, you know, just get into it. And then later on, you know, even when we signed over with Atlantic, it was like learning how to sing. You know, it was like, it's not like I said, I don't even consider myself a singer even to this day. It's just, I'm just trying to figure it out.
Right.
Still.
When you first started, was there even a hope or a glimmer in your eye that you could be like rich or famous or get anywhere with this? Was getting signed even like a thing that you knew about? No.
I didn't care about that then. I don't even care about that now.
You didn't know any bands that were successful?
No, not from San Diego.
Beyond like a local level?
No, not from San Diego. San Diego bands. I mean, you heard of bands that said, oh, later on, like, oh, they came from San Diego, but it's not like I have any connection or they're connected to San Diego streets or anything, you know what I mean? So
right.
If anybody, they can, you know, it's kind of like they grew up outskirts of San Diego, but then when they make it big, like, oh, we're from San Diego.
Right.
Because you're not going to say I'm from Podunk County, whatever.
Right. Did you, once you guys, like, how long were you grinding as like a small band? Would you say?
We did it stuff independently for a minute. So of 92, I think we signed maybe 99, end of 99, so about 6 or 7 years. We did stuff independently.
Because I saw you on 120 Minutes, an appearance that you guys did back then, and you were like, we've been grinding it out for like 8 years or some shit at this point. Like, you know, like it's not like these days where it's like you could be a bunch of cool looking kids in a band or rapping or whatever. You put your video on YouTube, the label sees it, boom, they pick you up, all of a sudden they blow you up. It was like you guys were really working the underground
we're
shit.
one of the last bands that we're a handful of bands that grind, you know what I mean?
Right.
That actually, we're not this story, you know, where these dudes decided to move to Hollywood. It was just, we worked full time. We were playing on our vacation, you know, our vacations during the summer. We were playing around San Diego all year long. We did stuff independently just because we had to.
Right.
And then it was, you know, then we started getting people looking at us and stuff. It just didn't feel right. So it was like, we just did everything we could independently forever. You know, and then it was like, okay, we feel like we have something, so why not try and take it up a notch?
And the fan base was like really starting to get strong on a local level?
Well, because we toured, we played for San Diego for 2 years, and then we did like a few weeks in the summer of 94, 95, and then 96, and we're like, dude, we can actually go full time because we've kind of spread the word. We've been, you know, passing out demos. We've been selling merch all throughout the States for the last few years.
What was like the bands that you would open for at that time that you were like hyped as fuck on? Like that was a huge one. We just opened for them.
Nothing
really?
Nothing on tour. On tour was always like underground stuff.
Okay.
But in San Diego, because we had love and respect in San Diego, you know, they put us on some of the bills, you know, like. You know, we got to play for Green Day one day, right before they signed. You know what I mean? That was just because we kind of earned a little bit of a following. But then, you know, when Cypress Hill came through and all kinds of other bands came through.
So you were doing shows with rappers from early on.
Oh yeah,
nice.
Just because they knew, you know, even it was Soma's down in San Diego. He kind of, you know, he knew our band had different elements and qualities to it, so it fit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And Cypress Hill has always kind of been in that zone too, where they weren't afraid to rock with rock bands back in the day. It wasn't always just like this hip hop thing, you know?
Right. It's kind of crazy because like the time period that you're describing throughout the 90s, there's kind of like this real rock wave building up, like even being pushed through MTV and shit that kind of, to me, almost like hits its crescendo sort of like at the end of the 90s or early 2000s, where it's like, you know, Korn and Limp Bizkit are the biggest shit in the world and all this. But from your perspective, were you thinking of like, you know, you guys as being like a new metal band? Were you hearing that word? Like, when did that kind of come into your consciousness?
New metal didn't come up until those days where,
Right.
you know, all of a sudden when you had to pay attention, and it wasn't like Korn was ever rapping and stuff, you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily whether you have a rap or hip hop influence. It was just the style of bands. They might have looked like some hip hop cats, you know, because it wasn't, you know, they were in a rock band, but yet they were dressing more street, you know, the baggier clothes, you know, hip hop brands, stuff like that. So it was kind of just meshing, but it's not like Jonathan Davis ever rapped or did anything like that.
Till later, I think. He never really rapped per se, but he would have songs with rappers on their songs.
No, for
and
sure,
stuff,
because I mean, there was always a mutual respect, but I don't think that was necessarily his thing. But as we were coming up, it was we were called all kinds of things. It was rap rock, it was rap core. It was whatever. And so new metal just happened to stick. So when people say, when they call us that, you know, we're not going to sit there and argue about it, but it's just like, dude, we've been called everything before you recognized that this was actually a genre.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Were you guys in kind of like a weird space where you weren't like, you didn't necessarily fit in with like the metal crowd or the rap crowd, but you had kind of like your own scene in a way?
I mean, I don't know if it was our own scene because people were similar to us. It was, I mean, we'll always be different because of where we come from, the different nationalities in this group, you know. But when we started to play shows and stuff in '92, people were like, "Oh, you guys are kind of like Body Count." So they just automatically. Those were two different things for Ice-T. He was a rapper. This was hip hop. This was his punk rock life. You know what I mean? So, but they just assume they mesh it together and say, "Oh, this must be what this is." So it's like, "Oh, you guys are like Body Count." It's like, no, we like Body Count, but we're in a way, I guess, but we're not Body Count. And then it wasn't until Rage Against the Machine hit the scene, it was like, "Oh, you guys are kind of like Rage Against the Machine."
All these different reference points that were kind
and
of
then
blowing
when
up.
Limp Bizkit hits, and it's like, but that's kind of when we hit it. We're like, nah, we've been around way before that. At least with Rage, we can say, because we loved Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
And we can say, dude, well, we were hip to Rage Against the Machine back then. But I remember a homie of ours, he came from Soma's. He didn't even know who Rage Against the Machine was. He went to see Rage. He came back to us the next day with like a demo and saying, "Dude, you guys are just like Rage. You guys do the same thing." And so we were like, "Huh?" But then I found out about Downset and stuff like that. And Downset was around even before
That
Rage.
was their hardcore project basically before that, or their hardcore band before Rage became the thing?
No. Rage. Zach was a part of a group called Inside Out.
Right,
It was more in the hardcore scene. So, but Zach used to come down. This is what I heard, because I wasn't really a part of that straight edge or like whatever that scene. But from what I heard from all the homies that I know, that Zach used to come down when he was in Inside Out, play shows, whatnot. But he used to watch this band from San Diego that we always loved, was called House of Suffering. And there, to me, are the first guys that really did mix hip hop and this kind of straight edge hardcore music. Daryl Blunt was the singer. He was this black cat. He was a rapper, and so to me, that was when it was like, what are these guys doing? I mean, you heard it with like, whether it was Blondie and Fab Five Freddy, whether it was what Aerosmith and Run DMC. You knew it was there.
From the very beginning, every other form of music has quite often been concerned with trying to figure out how to use rap's superpower. Yeah. Like, but this shit seems popular. We got to figure out how to use this. It was like a collab,
and it was like some vintage thing that was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But they never dove into it. Whereas these guys are like, no, these guys are a band, and he's rapping.
Right.
He's not even screaming. He's rapping over this kind of, emo, hardcore kind of music. And it was like, so we used to go to, those house parties and those underground shows and stuff like that. But we were never really part of that clique. It was, it was this straight edge kind of thing. It wasn't really our thing.
What year was it when you got signed, and how did you guys go about trying to get signed at that time?
I want to say we got signed at the end of '98, maybe.
Oh, okay.
But we did everything independently. We put out a couple records, put out some live stuff, and we toured our butts off. We built a fan base all around the United States, and then at some point it was kind of like, okay, what are we doing? And we brought on a guy from, his name was Tim Cook. He was throwing shows out in a
The
little
CEO
place.
of Apple?
No, I wish.
Different Tim Cook?
Different.
Yeah, I figured.
I wish. But it was he was throwing shows at this place called The Warehouse in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, like right above Tulsa. And, he was a smart guy, smart kid. He was our age. And at one point we were just like, dude, I think we need someone that can actually go out and look for these opportunities, because we're making music and touring.
Right.
To this day, we still try not to get involved in that stuff. We just want to be able to be creative and make music.
Was it kind of a new metal signing spree with the labels at the time, because they're seeing Korn, they're seeing Limp Bizkit, they're seeing all this success happening, and they're thinking like, we're gonna try to grab up every other band that kind of seems like they might be in that scene?
You would think, but even at that point, even with the popularity, well, I guess I want to say at that point, Korn was doing their thing. I wouldn't say Limp Bizkit and all them were. I wouldn't say they were completely this mega band. It wasn't really until TRL kind of embraced that whole thing.
That was when it really got crazy.
Yeah,
but that was like
mean?
98, don't you think? Like, I remember being in 8th
Was
grade
it?
and watching fucking Limp Bizkit on, well, at least I remember hearing them on the radio all the time. But then I think
You're
by
about
like,
right. It was like
by
99.
99 was when they like,
Right.
I think the second album came out, and then they were like
You're
officially
right. Yeah.
gigantic at that point.
You're right. What I think at that point, they were an exception, and then all of a sudden more rock bands like Bizkit, us, Papa Roach, started
True,
to kind of
yeah.
blend in with all the poppy stuff that was going on.
So when you go to the label, what's the vibe? Like, are they excited to be like pushing you guys, or did you kind of feel like you got signed and it was like
completely. They weren't looking for it. That's for sure.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of when it fizzled out afterwards, because everybody started looking for it. When they signed us, it was because of our A&R. His name is John Rubely, but he was he helped start like Lollapalooza and that kind of stuff. And he was more, The Cure and Depeche Mode, Bad Brains, all these kind of bands. And when he came out, somehow we got a hold of him through management. Again, people, Hollywood networking. He actually flew out to a little place called Walled Lake, Michigan, and where we were on tour. So he came to this, whatever place we played, and there's 1,000 kids there. Uh-huh. So we sat with him. We go to Denny's, and he's like, "Dude, we have platinum artists on Atlantic Records that can't pull 1,000 people."
Wow.
So this was more of this underground scene that he was used to and that he loved, and so that's when he started to mess with us. And then we ended up doing a few showcases. We did a showcase for Atlantic, and it was like at the Roxy or the Whiskey or something like that. And we had an off day, and so at the time, he's still there, Craig Cowman. He saw us and he wasn't impressed. And then he took John Rubely aside and he said, I'm giving you one shot. Is this the band you want to take your shot with? And he said, yep, it is. So it's not like they gave us all this love. We did our thing. It wasn't until TRL, but TRL was fan-based. It wasn't like, like now everything's rigged, or, what I'm saying? It's like the powers that be can promote whoever they want. Back then, it actually took the kid that was coming home from school to go whatever in his time zone from 3 to 4, whatever that is, dial it up. We didn't have cell phones back then.
Did you encourage your fans?
No, how could you?
I know, right?
How could you?
Yeah,
It wasn't social media. What are you going to do?
Say it on stage at a show or something?
Yeah, what are you going to do? That's why we were more shocked. But that just goes to show you that the work that we put in. And so kids that were, I say kids, we were kids, but people that were with us, it was more like we're doing this together. So the moment P.O.D. got a shot on this mainstream platform, that was groundbreaking, for our fan base.
Right.
So they started to do that, and it was because it was their voice that started to be heard. That MTV was like, who are these guys?
That's interesting, because normally when you hear people talk about MTV and TRL, you kind of hear them talk about it in like a cynical way, like, oh yeah, like a lot of those spots were bought and paid for, and it was what the label was trying to push and stuff. But that's cool to hear from you that was kind of what blew you guys up in a way.
I mean, maybe a lot of those bands, because they had it like that. We didn't. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't until that happened, and the fan base is what really put us on through TRL, that the label started. Well, then we started to sell records. So once that first record went platinum, then our label is forced to, we can't ignore that these guys have something special.
Right.
So once they started to, that next album, obviously get a little bit more budget, start paying a little bit more attention to you. Our first album, I don't even think was released internationally.
Really?
It wasn't until the second record, and then once Alive went, it was like #1 on rock radio right before 9/11, and so they started to just push it because there was something there.
Right, because you guys actually dropped your album on 9/11, which is a very, very rare designation that also applies to Jay-Z's The Blueprint.
That's right, and Mariah Carey.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Fabulous's first album, which is probably not as notable, but okay. But so at that time, was there any involvement from the label trying to get you guys to make hits, trying to make your music a little bit more mainstream? How much of an influence was there?
There wasn't. It wasn't forced. I mean, but at that point, obviously, we had this momentum, and then it was a conscious decision as a band. Okay, well, let's try some things, and this is where the singing comes. You know, like, hey, let's mess with this, and because I mean, there was never. I don't think there was ever really any pressure on our end. It was just like, but as a band, we're always like, how do we grow? Like, if this is part of growing, then let's give it a shot. Right. You know what I mean? So we did, and obviously, Alive was all part of us experimenting and growing, and it wasn't. It's not like we're singing through the whole song. It's you know, it is kind of more of a rappy. Yeah, it's the hook. You know? Yeah. But so I think we were just more conscious of like, hey, dude. You know, not in any way, shape, or form trying to sell out in any way, but it was like, who doesn't love a good hook?
Because there was so much concern about selling out at that time, especially in like the rock world. Like people, the fans were very much on alert for that. Whereas nowadays, if you're a new band or a rapper and you get a brand deal, I mean, hey, they're happy for you. Oh, you got a Fashion Nova deal? That's amazing. But that was like that's a sign of success now, which is weird.
But that was like the hip hop world too. Remember when they was like, they were never going to have a hook. No one was ever going to sing. And then all of a sudden, I remember the day I heard Mary J, or no, was it Mary J or was it, I think it was Mary J on Wu-Tang, on Method Man.
Oh yeah,
and that was like that was death. You know what I mean? I mean, as far as like that can't happen, and all of a sudden you hear it, and then Lauryn Hill with Nas, you're like, this is where it's going. You need that hook.
Yeah, and nowadays when rappers compare each other, they're mostly comparing each other on success and not like, oh, I'm the best rapper.
There's no skills. Yeah,
that's not really the focus.
No,
days,
that's it's the same thing with even where rock and roll is going now. Your craft is on the bottom tier. That's 0 to 1 level.
You think it's mostly marketing now in rock?
Oh, yeah. Well, in not as much as hip hop, but in rock and roll, it's definitely there's bands that do not know how to play, and but their social media is on point. Their gimmick is on fire. These guys went to college and got degrees in marketing, so they're all you need for the rock and roll recipe in 2021.
Wow,
you know what I'm saying?
That's crazy.
But so you go and see him, you're like, this dude don't even play.
I've seen metal bands where it's like, it's just so like the whole band is just dudes, and then the singer is like a hot chick with big fake tits, and I'm kind of like on the outside looking in, and I'm like,
you're kind of like, you're gonna stay a little longer to check them out, see if they got skills, right?
Fair enough. I might have looked up a video just because I'm curious, but then at the same time, I'm like, y'all are falling for this? Like you could do this now? You can just be like a band and you like hire like a sexy model to be the singer?
I mean, wow. Well, and then time tells, because there's bands that definitely have that, but then there's bands where you listen and you're like, oh no, this chick's badass.
Yeah, I'm not taking anything away from saying that like, they're all like that, but sometimes I've definitely seen ones where I went and watched a video and I was like, oh no, she is only here to look good. Yeah.
This chick's hot, but this band sucks. Exactly. But then it got you there. That's what I'm saying. That's where the marketing comes in.
Yeah, definitely. But were you thinking about marketing at that time? Did that even
what is that?
Yeah. That's what the label did on your behalf. You weren't really used to the idea.
I hope they did. I still don't know if they did or not. Right. That was just us and all the work that we had put in, the fan base that was there, that got us recognition.
Right, definitely. So did Atlantic ever try to put you as songwriters?
No.
Really? Never even tried?
I think they tried, but
You resisted.
We resisted. We still haven't necessarily sat down with, even to this day, and sat down with a songwriter. The only thing we got close with was the last record where we were like, you know what? We have nothing to prove. Been around. We're getting older. We just need to get out of our own head. So we actually allowed these two guys. They're called The Heavy, and they're younger, and they're amazing, talented. We actually allowed them to sit in with us during the writing process. Normally, every record before, we just bring the music to our producer, and then it's like, here's our stuff, this is what it is, and then they'll help us. From there, we can go shape, build, take away, add, whatever.
Right.
But these guys were there from the beginning, but it wasn't like, no one ever said, here's a riff, here's this. It was like, this is what we have. and we are completely welcome to hear anything.
Because I'm always just kind of curious about how common that is in the rock world. Because like
Nowadays, yeah.
Because like Hatebreed was always like one of my top bands when I was a young man.
Sick.
And I think it was their third album or second album, Perseverance. I forget what the single was on that album, but I remember I had been listening to the first project so much, and then I get that project, and the single from that sounded so well written and polished that I just remember, like, even as a young kid being like,
This is not.
there's some kind of special sauce here. Maybe, but I don't know if that's true. I would ask Jamie Justa if I ever
Right,
got a
you
chance
have
to
to
meet
ask
him.
Jamie.
Yeah.
And
Maybe they just had a great day that day.
Or it could be a better budget for recording,
Yeah.
a better budget for mixers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all possible.
Yeah, and I mean, I was a kid, so
Yeah,
what the
yeah,
fuck
yeah.
did I know? But I was just guessing, you know? Definitely. So, I mean, you guys get into that position. So, like, with Alive, like, was there anything that stood out to you as special about that song before that came out, or that was going to be this sort of, like, career-changing moment for you guys?
I don't think it was a career changer, but it was definitely special. You know when it's special, you know.
Right. Because if people now don't know anything about you,
Yeah.
they still know that. They'll still sing the hook to that.
Oh yeah, we could. That's those songs. Even again, not like you planned it, or whatever, but those songs have become anthems. I mean,
Yeah.
we can literally go probably in any part of the world and set up on a stage and play "Youth of the Nation" Alive, and boom, and people are going to be like, "Oh, I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that."
Right.
Which is, we still trip out on that to this day. You know
And
what I mean?
that's kind of like the power of music,
Yeah.
that they could be sort of like not that invested as fans, but music makes so much sense to people that
Yeah.
even a song that they rocked out to however many times
Yeah.
on the radio at some point or whatever could still have this chunk of their head. Like
Right.
they hear that song and it still brings them
Yeah.
joy, you know?
Whether they know your band, like your band, whatever, it just happens to. I think those songs just happen to hit in a certain moment in time, the right song, the right everything, that it will be remembered.
Right.
And that's not, again, we couldn't have sat in the studio before and said, let's write a song that's going to do all those things.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
No.
It just because of 9/11, because of the state of the world at that time, you know what I mean? It was just, people were looking for answers, and we happened to be, if probably the only rock and roll band of any type of angst or any type of, like, you know, a little bit of heaviness that they weren't afraid to listen to, because our message was positive. Whereas the Slipknots of the world and even the Hatebreeds of the world,
That's
even
interesting.
a name Hatebreed,
Kind of more destructive.
yeah.
Yeah.
In 9/11, no one wants to hear a song from Hatebreed, and I love Hatebreed.
Nihilistic. It's fuck everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's I mean, like there was a moment there where that song kind of became, you know, like an anthem because it
Yeah.
spoke to positivity and,
Yeah.
and it gave people the hope that they kind of needed
For that,
at that
for
point.
that moment, they weren't looking all around. They were like, okay, this is our world right now. We need something positive. I mean,
It's
how
crazy.
much every day say, that's what I want? Most of it, we're looking for whatever comes our way.
I was just watching this YouTube video about how 9/11 killed rollerblading. Because after 9/11, it felt like this was just too silly, too yuppie, too corny
Really?
for people to embrace. I was just reading about this, and I was wondering if I agreed with it. But it occurs to me that either way, like 9/11 definitely shifted the fucking culture in so many ways.
Well, now after that article, rollerblading will be the next trend come next month.
Well, but see, that's the thing is I watched this documentary about rollerblading that came out in 2006, and that's how it ends. Is like, oh, but rollerblading is totally making a comeback. It's such a
see,
hardcore
exactly.
sport, and I've been loosely paying attention to it, and it's been 15 years since that documentary, and
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
see it happening. Yeah,
Oh, you'd be surprised, bro. When we hit the skate parks and stuff, I still see cats tearing it up.
they're out there,
You're like,
but
oh, okay.
the industry is small. But actually, during COVID, the rollerblading industry went up a bit.
Yeah, when roller skates did too.
Did it?
Roller skates is huge right now.
You're a fan of that? Of roller skating?
wife is.
I'm a fan too because my girl made me go do it one time in a roller rink, and I actually like got right back into the groove of it like I was 13 again, and I was having a good ass time.
Couples dance or couples skate, all that stuff.
Yeah, well, she rented it out for a
That's
photo
sick,
shoot,
dude.
so we didn't have anybody else around, so I didn't
That's
even
cool.
have to like think about what. I mean, I have no idea who's at a roller rink in Glendale
Yeah.
in the middle of the day on a Tuesday is typically, but I didn't even have to worry about anybody looking at me.
That's great, dude. I think it was earlier in the year we were looking online because it just became the thing. and you couldn't even find skates like online.
Really?
Because it was just like you said, because of COVID. I mean, but everything went up. Skateboarding went up.
All kinds of shit. Yeah.
Home
BMX
production,
bikes.
yeah,
'Cause
music.
I was in that business. We had a bike shop on Melrose that shut down right before COVID, and oh my god, bike sales went through the roof after that.
Oh, dude, kids just want to be normal, and we're not forcing them, but we should be making them get outside when it was just time to get off the games and get off the computer.
Get outside.
Go outside and breathe.
Enjoy yourself. Yeah, 100%. The other thing about the Alive song was like I was reading the comments, and it's been re-uploaded on YouTube. So the upload that's up right now has only been there for a year or so, I think. It still has like 7 million views in a year, but the comments are all people talking about, this is the song that saved me from committing suicide.
Yeah.
This is the song when I quit heroin. This is what got me through it. It's like, it's eerie how many of those comments are saying the same thing. It's kind of fucking crazy.
Bro, because I hate this industry. I do.
Not surprised, but
and
many people end up
because
there.
it's so just it's so fake in general. Just this whole music game, especially now. I would have, like I said, I never knew our band was going to be around almost 30 years. I didn't expect it to happen, but thank God it provided all kinds of things. Not only for whatever, for my life, for my family. It's provided for them. But now it's even different nowadays. So it's like, the only reason why I continue to tolerate the nonsense that goes on in the music industry is because there's not a show that we don't play, and I don't even read the comments, but I already know that they're there. There's not a show that we don't play that I don't run into whoever, and you can hear "You Rock" so many times, you can hear how badass you are so many times, and that doesn't do it. I don't need that. But it's those comments. It's like, dude, your music changed my life. I had the gun in my mouth and Alive came on the radio. I had the gun in my mouth when the number of songs I heard came on. Same thing, whether I was addicted for 30 years, whether it was broken home, everything. And it's like, your music is what got me on the right path. And that, again, that's no power of, I don't have that power. But that's why I decided, or I chose to jump in a band and play music that I knew nothing about, was because of the things I was going through in my life. And I knew that if my life was changing for the good, and if I can scream that on the microphone, then maybe one person will listen.
Yeah.
And at first it wasn't even about one person. It was really just about my neighborhood and my street. So if my homies could see that I've changed, or they can see that I'm different, or if the neighborhood could see that there's something to what I believe in, then maybe they might embrace it.
Right.
And it's just been 30 years later.
I'm so fascinated by the idea of like you writing that song in the moment as a young man, and then it's still like you're basically like repeating, like every time you perform a show, you're sort of like just taking yourself back to that chunk of time when you made that song. And I mean, does your relationship change with that song over and over and over the years as you play it?
No.
Or is it,
it's amazing.
Is it like reconnecting with an old friend every time?
We finished our tour last week. We just did 2 months of here in the States of our satellite 20th anniversary.
Right.
So we just toured that, and we played the album from front to back. And it was amazing. The only thing that was different was that we played it from front to back, and Satellite is the second song on the record, where we're normally used to ending our set with that feeling, like that feeling alive. But so that was the only thing different. But no matter where you go, like I said, you play that song in any language, any continent, they're singing that song, and that's just I can't describe that.
Right.
But I also can't say that I didn't know that it was gonna do that. But to this magnitude, it still blows my mind that we can still get up and play that song, and people are crying, or they're smiling, or you know what I mean?
Are you guys big in South and Central America, I would assume?
Yeah, South America's we do really well in the Latin countries.
You were touring down there like early on and stuff, and trying to build up that fan base?
No, we weren't, which was crazy. We actually didn't go to South America until, I want to say, like until like 2013, 2014.
Oh wow.
So again, it's the powers that be. It's the label stuff, you know what I mean? And we never had gone down there, but when we did, we were so blown away by the turnouts that it was like, this is bananas. But again, I mean, dude, we're a blue collar band. We're not this. A lot of these bands that you see, bro, they don't need to play. They don't need to put out records. They can give them away for free. They can act out this certain way. They can do that stuff. They are not hustling. P.O.D. is, we have been hustling from the beginning. We will always be hustling. As much as we want to go and tour our butts off in all these different countries, at the end of the day, because the budget is in our hands, you don't make money.
Right. It's just tough. You got to fly out.
We want
the band is 5 people, a couple more
just
people.
In your
I'm
crew,
assuming.
just imagine all that stuff. So everything that you make in your guarantee goes into all your expenses and your overhead. So it's like, it's not like we don't want to, but you know, unless we're on tour with Metallica or something, you know what I mean?
It doesn't usually make sense financially to get out there.
It never makes sense financially, but we still do it, which is crazy because in 2019 we went and toured. We did 2 tours in Europe, which we didn't even do during Satellite, which was crazy because we went there in early 2019. The response was so crazy off our new record that we were like, why don't we come back again? Right. So we did a second leg of that tour at the end of the year, and it was a success.
For sure. When you were really in the heat of that period of a couple years where you guys are on MTV every day and it's going crazy on the radio and everything, what was it like with the label? Did they all of a sudden just get a lot more involved once you guys are really starting to print some money for them? Or what was that relationship like?
Well, the first record, Fundamental Elements of Southtown, when that went platinum, then it forced the powers that, you know, at the label to be like, okay, we have to act like we care about these guys.
Right.
So, but not to say that we didn't build great relationships with the help, which were our people that loved our band, and we built relationships with them, and they were the ones. It was that team over at Atlantic that really did it for us, helped our career. They were a part of everything we were doing. So then again, when Alive comes out, the video's #1 on TRL. That's #1 rock radio, and so it's not that they're not paying attention now, but okay, they got we're an investment now. Before we weren't.
Right.
Now they're invested into us.
Labels are still the same, you know.
Right, still the same.
They're paying you no fucking attention, but then all of a sudden they see a good opportunity to make a bunch of money, boom, they're all over
But
it.
even platinum made them care a little bit. But then the moment, you know, all of a sudden your 9/11 hits and all of a sudden the tension's on P.O.D. People care about P.O.D. It was like, let's get behind these guys and act like we are part of the family. And that was never the case.
Right.
I mean, there were family there, but the rest of them was but they're just trying to make their money. I mean, even before, like, because this is a stigma we've tried to fight forever. We're not this Christian band, but because of our faith, people they put that on you. So everybody knew that. Atlantic Records, even at that time, it wasn't until we started selling records that they even came to us and they're like, are there any other bands out there like you guys, Christians? And it was like, okay, well, we know some bands that are cool and you know, they signed a lot of them,
right.
And there's a lot of them made back their money. There's still some out there today that are successful. So, but it wasn't about like, okay, let me get behind these guys because they have something to say. It was like, oh, let me get behind these guys because I can make my money.
Definitely,
that's all they care about.
How big a percentage of your fan base do you think was coming from the Christian community at that time? Like, how big?
If we've sold 12 million records, it definitely ain't 12 million Christians about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the time, we were underground. Like we sold. You know, obviously there were kids that shared the same faith and same beliefs that I believe were kind of like the steam behind it because we weren't this cheesy choir boy whack.
Right.
Christian band.
Because especially at that time, I remember that there was very much like the Christian hardcore scene or the Christian metal scene. I'm sure it's still like that to some extent. But like for me as a person who didn't identify with that, I just remember looking at that and like even being kind of nervous to listen to you guys or to think like, oh, I'm gonna check that band out because it felt like Christian music was inherently corny. And when I look back at that, it seems very strange, like just that we were so quick to put people in groups. Well, because
you look at Main Street, and I have, this is no disrespect towards any of these bands, and again, I wasn't raised that way. I didn't listen to these bands, but I only know it because of my position. Where I still hear guys that were like, when I grew up, all I was allowed to listen to was Christian music, and then when that comes into the first band they say or group they say is DC Talk.
Right. Yeah. That's the one.
So I'm like, I didn't
know.
know who DC Talk was. You know what I'm saying? So I don't. I love those guys. I mean, as far as the dudes I met, you know what I mean? There's no disrespect there, but that's what people consider Christian rock or Christian music or Striper.
I just had to put DC Talk in my notes so that I could like look up more information about them, because I just remember seeing them as a kid, but I don't really like actually remember the story.
But I remember Striper too, but it wasn't because I was like, I listened to Christian music, quote unquote. It was like, those guys actually made some noise in the rock and roll scene. So I did. But to me, I just remember seeing guys with yellow and black tights that looked like girls, and I didn't like that music anyway. So I was like, these guys are Christians, you know what I'm saying?
I remember at that, or not really at that time, but a little later on, I remember hearing that in like 2007 MySpace rock type era, that there was such a strong like Christian metalcore scene that there would be a lot of bands who sort of pretended to be Christian just to sell more records or just to get a fan base.
Well, I think P.O.D. blew down a lot of those doors where it was like, okay, well that's not just that Christian band. They're like, no, that's P.O.D. Those
you
guys
could be cool.
But I knew because we were very open with our faith and we started to get pigeonholed. We already knew every time we jumped on a stage that we had to be 30 times better than the band we're playing with. And that was it. It was never we never got up and made this grand statement that we're a Christian band. It was like, no, we're a band. You know what I mean?
How did people even realize that you guys were Christian? Was it just through the lyrics, or was there ever a moment where sort of that was like the headline, is like, look at this Christian band, they're great?
Well, when you listen to our first couple records, again, being young kids, the lyrics are cheesy, and they're very militant. They're not necessarily cheesy. They're very militant in a way that was like, because we come from the streets, so it was like when I became, and I don't even like saying Christian because people they get that twisted. I believe in Jesus,
right?
And that's a whole different conversation, right? That's not white Americanized Western Christianity. That is Jesus, okay? So when I took on Jesus, coming from the streets in the neighborhood, I already knew there was going to be backlash. I already knew, and even reading simple scripture, and even Jesus said himself, if the world hates you, it's because they hated me first. So what does that do to me as just a guy that's just kind of going through scripture, don't really know much yet? It puts me in defense mode. And because I'm from the streets, it's like, ain't nobody going to tell me that I can't love Jesus. Ain't nobody going to come against my Jesus. And so that was the mentality. So when you listen to a lot of the lyrics, it wasn't, again, not cheesy. It wasn't choir boy like Kumbaya. It was like, you're lucky that I'm a Christian or that I love Jesus, because if I wasn't, that'd be on you. You know what I'm saying?
Does it strike you that the version of Christianity that you related to very much also had to do with like you being Hispanic from San Diego, et cetera, where I think Christianity is just sort of viewed from a different lens than a lot of maybe the like young teen, white kids that were maybe drawn to the band because they were.
But even
Christian.
when I was a kid, I mean, we grew up like, my grandmother and mother were from Italy, so they inherit the Catholic world, you know what I'm saying? So I knew that, but again, that was never Jesus to me. That was this Catholic religion that I saw a lot of rules and regulations, and that. But even it wasn't like my family was immersed into it. You know what I mean? It wasn't this lifestyle. It wasn't this life-changing thing. It's just titled religion. So, but it wasn't until, and so I didn't know. Now you see another place where Christianity is and the groups that it fits. That was never my thing, but because I come from a young, broken, drug dealing, crazy family, the moment my family started to believe in Jesus, it was real. It was undeniable. So that wasn't religion to me. That wasn't cheesy, corny, Christian, whatever. It was like, oh damn, this is okay. This deserves a little respect. So it was always here in my mind. It was always something that I never had. Like, I didn't grow up as, most kids grow up and they're like, why do you hate God? Like, I don't know, I just do. Or I grew up that way, or whatever that turned them off to God. I was never like that. It was just, I just didn't know who God was. So, and I definitely didn't embrace, again, this westernized, blue-eyed, blonde hair, institution of Christianity. I didn't. I was anti it, to be honest with you. But I wasn't angry at God. It was just like, I just don't like that establishment. But then once I seen real people changed, that was undeniable, it was like, you know, and then when my mom got sick, and then it was like, okay, well, and I watched her change from selling drugs to do all this stuff. It's like, wow, she's actually this beautiful person that's in love with Jesus. And it's real. It's not Christianity. It's not church, this thing. It's real. So when I saw that, and then when I watched her, you know, on her dying bed, it was like, I owed it to her to look into it, if that makes sense. And it wasn't on anybody's terms. It was just, so I did.
Did your faith stop you from maybe necessarily, indulging in a lot of the things that become available to you once you're a rock star?
Yeah,
I'm thinking drugs. I'm thinking women. Did you?
For sure.
How did you do in regards to self-control in that world?
I mean,
and the band as a whole. I'm just interested to know how hard the debauchery got.
Oh, for sure. It's I mean, it's just still hard every day. But you ain't got to be in a rock band to get lost up in this twisted world. You know
Very
what I mean?
true.
So, but for me, there was always, again, through reggae music, through just my learning, it still made me want to be this man of God that, you know, I don't even know is still attainable, but yet I'm going to try my hardest. You know what I mean? So I married my sweetheart, who's I'll be married 25 years in a couple weeks. Been with her almost 31 years. A few days ago, never been with another woman.
Wow.
I smoked a lot of herb back in the day, but to me that wasn't a drug.
Right.
So it was like, but that was something I gave up, not because someone said you have to give this up if you want to be a good Christian. It was like, herb is everything to me in my life right now. And now that I'm making sacrifices and trying to be this, at least that's one thing I can put down for now, you know, or whatever, to because it's not that isn't my God. And so again, as we continue to go on, and all of a sudden you take 4 guys from the neighborhood and you're at, you know, Russell Simmons' Def Jam party, and you know what I'm saying? It's rock and roll, it's glamour, it's glitz. So of course you're gonna, you know, I mean, I can honestly say I've been pretty good. I can say that, but it's not like you're just gonna. I never turned away in this snobby religious way that was like I can't be a part of that. It was like, no, I want to know what the world's going. You know, what's going on in the world. But it's not like I stepped in and said, let me
become you.
Let me compromise everything that I believe in. I definitely, that was never a heart or intention to do that. And again, not that I'm nobody. I'm not perfect. I'm not this super giant in the faith. It's some spiritual giant. It's just like, you know, deep down inside, it's just trying to be a good dude. That's all.
Was there a lot of pressure on you? Because at a certain point, I feel like, you know, you're famous and some percentage of the audience wants you to be this version of this religious figure. You know, they listen to these songs, they mean the world to them, and then they maybe find out that you're flawed or that you're not.
News report, I'm flawed. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it's got to be a lot of pressure
both ways.
because people want you to be Jesus, right?
On both ways, and that made me bitter towards a lot of so-called Christians in the beginning too, because it was like, we were not your poster child of your personal faith.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's cool that you love us, and you know, but a lot of it, the people that get it. But
I'm
then
just a man. Like you shouldn't
exactly.
judge me any more harshly than you judge your friends, your family.
Exactly.
I'm
but
flawed just like you. Yeah.
But they do, and not only that, when I you know, said that prayer to give my life to God, I thought that I was doing this amazing thing, which was a big step for me, and then all of a sudden I was going to be embraced by this faith. It was the exact opposite. I mean, in the street you are, in the neighborhood and stuff, but then once we got in this band, it was like, dude, we had no idea that community was the same community that would come against us and say, well, you're not of God because you have tattoos. You're not of God because your music is definitely not of God.
Really?
And I mean, and those beliefs still happen today. It's not as common because I think we've broken a lot of those stereotypes.
I think religious people on average now are less judgmental and less rigid.
Yeah.
I would think.
To some degree, but they're still there.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I can't stand it. So you'd be surprised at how many people came against us. And if anything, it was that religious system that confirmed that we were supposed to be making music for everyone, and not because we were already messing whether it was keg parties, YMs, anywhere that would listen to our music, and we were catching a buzz in San Diego. It wasn't until the first time that we actually played a church that my guitar player, he went to when he was a kid. And it was a very strict church. I didn't know this. There were just going to be a lot of kids from other cities coming in. They were all going over to Mexico to help build an orphanage, and they were like, someone asked if we want to jam and for these young people before they throw, let's have a party, right? Church party, let's have it. So I went with all my homies that aren't even saved. If you were to look at the Motley Crue there, I get it why people say you guys aren't Christians or whatever, but the moment we played our first song, and we got a buzz in the streets already, the moment we played our first song, one of the dudes, youth group pastors or something, he stopped us right in our first song and said, oh, no, we can't have this.
Just because it was heavy.
Because it was heavy.
Damn.
So, and the disappointment I'll never forget on these kids' face was like, to this day, because I'll never forget, because here we are, and this is what religion does to you. These kids are sitting there, they got no life in them, they got no soul. It's almost like they're just being obedient because they want to go to heaven. They have to go build a damn orphanage in TJ because their mom and dad said they got to do it because if they want to be good little boys and girls in Christian religion, they have to. And they're sitting there with no life. The moment we started playing, I'll never forget the look. They came to life.
Yeah,
they came to life, and it was like there was freedom all of a sudden, and we started playing. And then when he stopped us, it's just like they ripped the life and the freedom right out of their soul, and it was like, wow. And I'll never forget the dude. He stops my guitar player literally by grabbing his guitar, which don't ever do that. Ooh. Whoever, if you listen to this, don't ever do that. You might get chin checked. Yeah. You're lucky he didn't that night, but we were in a church, so he did that. And then he said, oh, no, we can't do this. And then as all the kids and young people were just defeated, he said, let's give these guys, whatever. I'll never forget, bro. 5 crisp ones for their effort. So like robots, these kids, literally 5 crisp ones. I literally grabbed the mic out of this dude's hand. And I was like, and I just said, dude, don't be bummed for us, dude. We play music. We play music all the time. Like, it's not about us. It's not about music. I'm like, the fact that you're coming to my neighborhood to go to a country that needs whatever help they can get. That's what this is about. We were just here to hype you up in doing the good that you're gonna do. You know what I'm saying? And out of love, out of obedience to your faith. But it's like, dude, don't be defeated. Like what? Because this guy's he's not tearing us down. But that was confirmation that for us to keep playing in the streets, keep playing in the bars that we couldn't even get into because we weren't even 21.
Right.
Keep playing, opening up for these evil secular bands, quote unquote. You know what I'm saying?
But you never had any qualms about playing with secular bands? No. Yeah.
Never. It was just, but see, you said you grew up in the hardcore scene. If you were in the hardcore scene, it's because you believed in something.
Right.
That's the problem with most music today. They don't believe in nothing.
Yeah.
Tell me which hip hop artist right now, which pop star, you could sit there and, I mean, there's social causes, there's things, but that's all secondary to the money and the fame that they have.
Yeah.
So what, and I'm sure, I'm not going to discredit it all, but people don't care about that stuff. So for us, it was like, this is what we want to do. We want to inspire. We want to play whatever and whoever would listen to us. It started to piss us off when this quote unquote secular world put us in this box because of our faith. But like I said, with that hardcore scene, we were playing with guys that, whether you were vegan, whether you were straight edge, whether you were Krishna,
right.
Whether you were whatever, I don't. You know how I know about your show?
What?
Because I follow the homie Danny Diablo, and you had him on
nice.
it. So I was like, I looked up because he was bigging you up, and I was like, dude, this is sick. That's what's up. But see, whatever. He's not straight edge. You know what I'm saying?
No.
But because he was a part of that scene, it's just there's a respect that's given, and I don't care what you believe in. There's a respect that's given when it's earned,
right.
Whether you agree or not.
And of course, it just seems so crazy when you think about people who were thinking about how Christians should behave that way. Because, I mean, your goal is to be you and then go out into the world and perhaps spread some
Yes.
part of what you believe in to
Yes.
the world. And when we think about every other sort of like fringe viewpoint or whatever, it's like we don't give vegans a hard time because they don't hang out with people who meat.
Exactly.
We don't give people who are straight edge a hard time because they go and hang out with some guy who smokes weed. That sounds crazy nowadays. But to put that expectation on people who are religious is just so bizarre, and I think was such a sign of the times. Although I'm sure it still happens in that scene now. Yeah,
for sure. But that's why even when we started to be labeled as Christian, this that, it's like how come when MCA converted to Buddhism, they weren't Buddhist hip hop all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or whatever it was. There was a bunch of bands back in the day, Shelter, all those guys that were Christian. It was like, I mean, they said it, but I don't even know if that ever existed. Like we're a Krishna band. It's just, we're
but it's so weird because it's like because Christianity is sort of the inherent religion of America, then the average American will feel comfortable taking a Christian band to task about not being Christian enough, even though the average American is not nearly as Christian as probably even you guys were. That's such like a bizarre thing where they feel comfortable being critical of it. Whereas on the other hand, it's not like any people were like picking apart the Bad Brains as Rastafari beliefs
Marley,
because we don't know enough to do it. You know,
like I said before, Marley. Everybody praised Marley as being this one love person, but it's like, again, his lyrics were a lot of his lyrics were scripture. And they were scripture based, but because he smoked herb, and it's like you're not. Oh, he's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, but even if you listen now, I said this before, Marley himself would be canceled culture today because of the things that he said.
Right.
Right? I mean, you remember One Love, but if you go deep, there's a lot of stuff that are scripture based that the world don't want to mess with it.
And his actual story is pretty unbelievable, especially just being wrapped up in all the politics and street shit out there and everything, man.
And then the assassination, but I mean, it's like what we said earlier. I mean, Jesus said, if the world hates you, it's because they hated me first. And so I believe that that's a part of it, but I also believe that there's a part of this Christian institution that is so, for this westernized institution that is so hypocritical for the last whatever years, that of course, so when we see them, of course you're waiting for somebody to fall because you're like, dude, you act perfect, you act holier and better than people. So why aren't you looking for the moment that they fail? They kind of set themselves up in a way. I mean, I don't look for anybody's failure, but it's like people are waiting for that person to fall because why? He's been so freaking religious. He hasn't had grace. He doesn't live in those boundaries of love and empathy and compassion. It's just like, you can do this, you can't do that. And then the moment you actually show your true colors, that you actually are flesh and human being, of course someone's gonna take you down for it because you were on that microphone screaming everybody else is the sinner and not you. You know what I mean?
Humans are weird.
Humans suck. But you have to love them.
Facts.
Or it's going to be chaotic and this world is just going to continue to get worse.
Okay, so you guys are kind of like riding this wave, this height of popularity and stuff. Is there a lot of pressure on you for singles or records to sort of reach the same heights that you had already achieved?
I don't think it was necessarily pressure, but it was definitely encouraged to be like, hey, okay. But it didn't take much encouraging because, like I said earlier, we were like, okay, we don't want every record to be the same. I mean, if you listen to all P.O.D's records, they're not. None of them are the same. We're not trying to duplicate our hits or, it's like we just write because we're a band and we make music. We did try, obviously to sing a little bit more, to find, the hooks in songs. And we were just learning how to just structure songs in general. It was their second record with a real producer. And I think on that first record, he actually kind of taught us what a song was, whether it was verse, chorus, you know what I mean? It was just kind of, there really is a structure to it, you know what I mean?
And you guys were kind of oblivious to that previously?
Not oblivious, but we were just, if you listen to some of our independent stuff, we have like 7-minute songs, we have 5 verses,
right?
You know what I mean? Because we weren't like radio listeners, you know what I mean? It was just like, even now, like they would never play like a Pink Floyd or a Zeppelin, they'll play them now because they're who they are, but that's part of the politics and that's the stuff that I hate, where whoever's hot. I remember at one point, because Linkin Park was, when they hit the top of the world, at one point it was like the perfect song is, it was 3 minutes, 30 seconds in that area. And I remember when Linkin Park had a hit song and they were in the 2 minute something. That's how silly it is.
Yeah.
Where it's like, they'll go down to that, where it's like, oh, now it's accepted because that's what a hit song is.
But all of a sudden you find yourself in the position where you have the label caring about things like song length and wanting you to make certain
with the producer it was I mean, obviously, it's common sense. He just showed us, we weren't like this jam band or whatever. We already put out independent records that we got to be ourselves, fully naked, you know what I mean, just like raw. And now we're part of a label, and we're part of a real record.
Right.
That maybe these are just important things to take. It's not like we were forced. It was just like, okay, cool.
What was going on with the Boom video? It feels like that was that era where all the rappers were spending so much on music videos that the bands kind of started to get in on it, and were doing like weird, like almost like movies, like in their music. For those who don't know, it's like a very intense ping pong battle in the video. It sounds. If you think I'm lying, I wouldn't blame you, because it sounds crazy, but it's pretty cool.
No, I think that budget was probably. I think we probably saved money on that budget.
Really?
The
Okay.
live budget and the youth budget was massive, but even then, if you would have asked us, now with technology, it's so much easier, but you're right. It's like everybody's bragging, Jay-Z's got $1 million video, and so-and-so topped it, whatever. And all of a sudden, we're doing a live video, and then they tell us what the budget is. And, we're guys from the street. None of us own our own houses back then. You know what I mean? It's like, you're going to spend how much on a video? Not knowing fully in 100% completely that we'd have to recoup all that later anyway. So you're just playing with our money, our future money anyway.
Right.
Which is a whole another story.
Right.
But that video, I think after Alive came out and Youth of the Nation came out, it was such serious content. Southtown was us, in the neighborhood. And then Boom is more, it wasn't a serious song. And it was us being more lighthearted and flossy and having fun. And normally when you get these treatments from these directors, whatever, everything is more hard and serious, and we want to capture you guys and graffiti and lowrider, the same thing that we're used to. And it's like, and I probably would have went that way because that was the norm, but it was actually the one treatment from this cat and our guitar player, who's, he's a more indie kind of guy. He was like, I really like the ping pong video. And we're like, what? That's lame, dude.
Right.
But it was like, we really got convinced that, what? Maybe we shouldn't always be portrayed as just this one element that's always graffiti. It's always lowriders. It's always this street hard element. And we just came off with Alive and Youth of the Nation, and we weren't trying to be as serious. So that video was really lighthearted.
Right. It was great. Personally, I loved it.
But if you notice at the end, we did get into a fight.
Right. It's just such a sign of the times. I'm like, wow, this is a beautifully 90s video right here.
Yeah, it was fun. Man.
Yeah.
I think that director went on to do some really cool movies after that.
Really?
A lot of our directors, even the director that did Alive, I think he went on to do some huge movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, but so do you feel like you guys were fairly compensated in terms of like what you should have been building financially at that time, or do you look back at that time like, damn, I wish our business had been more in line?
Everybody knows, and you've heard this already, it's that the labels were designed to keep the artists in debt. And that's just, look at every Hollywood True E story, whatever. And especially when you get, whether it's, guys like us, it's like we don't come from much, so we don't need much as far as we don't, and we're not like flossing, so we're not fronting like that. And but you feel like, okay, when money's coming in, it's cool, and then a lot of times you feel like, dude, we're on the top of our game, and it's always going to be like this. You know what I mean? And that's an ignorance that probably anybody that faces that kind of success has to deal with. You know what I mean? But now, we didn't know back then that no one was going to buy records again. You know what I mean? We didn't know. We toured our butts off forever, putting in work, thinking that later down the line, we would have a lot more say in our touring game and our touring world. And, because we have kids, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to tour 13 months out of the year and not raise my kids.
Right.
I'll quit music. I quit it yesterday, you know what I mean? But we did work hard in the beginning when our kids were super young for those reasons. But then once no one's buying records, and we're that band that makes money from shows and from touring.
Right.
And we even when people think P.O.D. and they think that mainstream, and I saw you guys all over MTV, all this stuff, we missed that cap. We missed that cap of like big deals, with the Corns of the world and all those guys that you hear the story, Offspring. Oh, they got, even lately, they got 60 million for their catalog. It's like, or, even back then, Korn got this, or these bands got this. And it's like, that didn't happen with us.
Yeah.
We've always been hustling. So we don't know that world.
It's kind of nice to be like the biggest band in the genre. And obviously they get some benefits from sort of having been that. I mean, you guys were a very popular band, but like there's just a certain level of like success that you're going to see when you're that gigantic fucking band like Korn became,
When you're on, true. But again, it comes with certain labels, certain people that are behind you to do stuff. We were on that trajectory, right? And then a lot of it faded out with a lot of the music that come and people trying to copycat and duplicate that sound and stuff that wasn't really authentic. But then not only that, we were on, with that third record, we had a fallout with our guitar player. And even then, it wasn't like, okay, we sold 1 million records and you think, oh, we should get paid off those 1 million records. Doesn't happen that way. All of a sudden, Satellite comes out. We're looking at 4, 5, 6 million worldwide. After this record cycle, we're going to get broken off, right? Doesn't happen that way. It's always in negotiations. So during that record period, from Satellite to the next record, was our negotiation. And this is what we've been working hard. Now we call the shots, right? We've put ourselves in a position. Now we can start hustling and wheeling and dealing with the labels. So we did that, right? They know that they know how many albums we sold and they know how much money they owe us, but they're not going to give you what they owe you. It's like it's just like buying a house, right? Whatever, you're going to wheel and deal, right? Or you're at the flea market, you know what I'm saying? You're going to hustle. That's exactly what they did. Boom, 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 all this stuff. Numbers. It's like, and these are good numbers, right? Which could have set us up. Good numbers. Nah, it's not. That's not going to work. Good number. We're wheeling and dealing. Right? It's going up and up. We're doing our job, right? We got a good hustle. The moment we had a falling out with our guitar player and we split ways, whatever, that's a whole different conversation. The moment they found that out, instead of going up, and here was our original offer, they went like this. Bam.
Why?
Because we're now we're not the same dream team that did what we did.
Yeah, but one monkey don't stop the show.
That's what I say, and that's been proven. But
right, I mean, a guitar player. If you leave, then they should get much less money.
Because they're the biggest hustlers in the. Again, it's the label.
Right.
They're the biggest hustlers in the world. What are we gonna do? Wow. So at one point, and then even then, and that was around the time. So whatever, we did the deal. We moved on. We still have success, but that's the time when all the labels and everybody started crumbling. Lights are getting shut off at the offices. It's around 2004. I remember
the writing's on the wall about streaming and Napster and everything at that moment.
And at that point, here we have a number one song again, third record we do, right? Number one song, number one TRL, whole nine.
Right.
We're on tour with Linkin Park. Biggest, right? Whatever.
Right.
We already recorded our second video, going to second single. That stuff never even hit. They never even hit the radio, never hit MTV because all the labels were shutting down. And at that point, it was like, it's all about investment. It's like, we already got what we wanted from these guys.
Right.
Now, maybe if they would have gave us that big advance, they would have kept hustling us because they got to make back their money. But the fact that what they paid us, and they can move on to different things. Again, it's not like they were like, oh, we are Team P.O.D. thick and thin. It was like, no, we jumped on them when they made us money.
Right. And
we wrote it out until now. All right, there's a little confusion in the camp, just a little bit. Doesn't mean it can't be worked out. Little confusion in the camp. And there were all the people that was our team. They were, not our team in general, but just workers in general, firing people from other labels. They were shutting down. They were firing people.
Right.
People at the labels were more concerned about keeping their job than they were pushing their bands. Right. So when that record came out, still did well. Next record came out. They spent all this money. They there was no interest anymore, and they were shelving our stuff. So we were about to jump into a 5th record, and because of our contract, we had a big record advancement. And at that point, we were like, we would rather just leave this dang label, because we're gonna put our heart and soul again into another record, and knowing you guys aren't gonna do anything with it. Like, why would we do that?
And how much of a fight did they put up in terms of you leaving?
Just give us a greatest hits record.
That's what they said.
Well, why would they give a fight? Because that's their advance that they were going to give us is
right.
They don't.
Yeah, I mean, once a label starts thinking short term, like once everybody becomes concerned strictly with their short term incentives, then all of a sudden the band that just takes a lot of work or might take a little time just gets shelved.
And that was even 20 years ago. So even then we were saying, like, you labels, you're not looking for the next Led Zeppelin. You're not looking for the next, like, you know what I'm saying? Whatever, U2 or whatever bands that, even Metallica that stand the test of time. And that's what's happening in even music today. They just dude, it's all hype. I mean, how many artists right now do you think that we might even like that you're going to say is going to be...
Tough to say,
because we're just consumers. I mean, we're consumers. So we're not in it. I mean, maybe that's just the world in general these days. We're not in it for the long haul anymore. We're just like, I'm just scrolling.
I feel like in a lot of ways, rappers or even bands sometimes are kind of like memes, in the sense that you're scrolling through your timeline, you see a meme, you send it to a couple of your friends, and then you never think about it again. And a lot of rappers, it's unfortunate for them, but that's kind of what their career ends up being reduced to, is you have a cool song, you have a funny flow, you have an interesting, beef or interesting storyline. People are interested in you for a little bit, but then they ultimately end up just moving on to the next meme, because that's what people do with memes. Then be able to take that moment of people paying attention to you because you had a hot song or because you had whatever, and to turn that into an actual career where they'll still be down to listen to your 3rd, 4th project. I mean, that's like a Herculean effort. And I think that,
sucks.
It's cool to be a rapper who gets his, 5 minutes of fame. I mean, shit is better than getting no fame. But yeah, the industry is very, very much set up to sort of give people this short burst of attention now.
Yeah, we scroll right past everybody.
So what does that do to your motivation and you guys as a band when all of a sudden the label just kind of becomes useless to you? Like, where do you go from there?
Well, we had went through some things as a band, and then it was just, I mean, our other guitar player comes back. We heal the family there, right? It's all good. We move on, and then there was just we had gone through so many different things, just real life stuff, even with members in our band, and for me it was like I had just gotten, I think this was around, I want to say 2009, where I was just like, dude, I'm just so sick of, I'm tired of this game, this music game. I'm tired of, and we had just become kind of this brand, and it was fine. It was like, and we used to always say in all of our interviews back in the day, like, man, if this ever stops becoming fun, like, I don't want to do it anymore. Because we had watched all the bands, and even today, there's bands that are very, very successful, and they don't even like each other. Yeah, they all have different buses. They all stay in different hotels. They don't even talk or hang out until they play, and it's like, this is sad. Yeah, because we, even my guys, we're brothers. Yeah, so. When there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's just like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be just a number. And so, whatever. We took a little bit of time off, and in the long run, I mean, I could see how that hurts you, but we came back, kind of on our own terms, where it was like, I don't want to be a part of that system anymore. I'm not gonna be the latest trend. Like if you look at even a lot of the bands that we started with, and even are still around, if you look through their album cycles and stuff, dude, they're not the same guys. Yeah, they change, and like, you're not gonna get that from me and my guys. We're not that band. We're not gonna wear makeup when it's cool. We're not gonna we had tattoos before it was cool. Right. You know what I'm saying? If anything, those are the things that were authentic that made us pop a little bit more. Oh, that's that band. Well, they're covered in tattoos. Oh, they're from, they have street credibility. Whatever. Any of these things. Now that stuff, you can buy that. You can buy that, or you just say it and it exists. There's no resume, right? So there's at a point in time where, you know, we kind of counted the cost, and we knew, like, man, at the end of the day, like, we want to be able to still do this and have integrity, have honor. And I don't think any fame, or even to some point, any even dollar is worth that.
Right.
Because it was, we saw that. You asked the question earlier. We saw that in some of the songs where it's like, they suggest a lot of things. Do they ever force you? No. But the moment you don't do exactly, take their advice, you're not going to get 100% of their push.
Right.
So it's like, you know what kind of band you want to be. Then the moment they're telling you, well, this is what we think you should do. And then we're like, okay, cool. Thank you for telling us, but we're still going to do what we want to do. Okay.
Right.
So once you start to know that it's not going to go our way anyway,
yeah,
then it's like, why am I going to just continue to, because then we're not a band anymore. We're just one of your products.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. Like, is the band as it is right now the original lineup, or how close? It's the original lineup. Everybody. That is so unthinkable to me that you could get
exactly.
Was it 5 guys?
4 guys.
4 guys on the same page about something 25 years ago, or whatever, however long it was, and that they could still be on the same page that many years later, especially. Exactly. Coming from a rap perspective, where every group breaks up within, because they don't need each other.
Yeah,
you know, like guitarists can't go solo. The rappers, they need each other, but they still break up right. I mean, they don't need each other, so they just break up right away. But for a band to stay on the same page, like, and has there been real strains on the relationships? Like, to what extent has that brotherhood really held you together?
No, we're not always on the same page. You know, I mean, we say this. I've said this for a minute. There's so many things, you know, in the 23 hours of the day that don't make sense. And whatever, we were kids when we started, and now whatever, we have, you know, we have different ideas and different, you know, opinions and different beliefs and all that stuff. And there was a long period of time where we felt like we always had to be the same, where we always have to agree. Which now, the more you mature, you're like, dude, it doesn't change my love for you. You know what I mean? And it's kind of what makes it cool. And the music that we create is that we are on the same page on a lot of things, which is fine. This is a relationship. You know what I mean? This is, we're building something together. So we, you know, even now there's a lot of stuff we don't agree, but that 1 hour or whatever that you play, those 23 hours of the day that we could even be mad at each other. We can even be not even talking to each other that day because you pissed me off about something. But that moment we play for that hour, magic.
Really?
It's magic. It's
Still
30 years of
place.
30 years of everything that makes sense.
Muscle memory, like the song, like if somebody fucks up the song a little bit, does everybody just else naturally accommodates it? Like, it works in a way that could never happen.
I see it like if a wife and a husband get divorced and they really don't get along, right? But they got a beautiful child that they love, right? And that child, say, is going to graduate whatever college and get their degree in whatever, and this a big huge success outside their divorce or their hatred for each other. Are they going to both be at that ceremony and be that this don't matter anymore, whether you agree on this or not, or you don't like each other? What matters is that at least you did something right. You know what I'm saying? This kid right here is about to go change the world, and at least we did something right. But the energy should be focused on that, not how much I can't stand you. And I'm not, me and my brothers, we can't stand you is harsh. So we love each other. But, you know, we have difference in opinions? Yeah.
Right.
It's what it is.
And I mean, now I would assume all or most of the guys in the band have kids and wives.
Oh yeah. Dude, we're old, brother. So our kids are, I mean, my oldest is 21. She'll graduate from college this year.
Right.
My cousin's kids are older than that. Trey, our bass player, his kids, grown, military, they're all, we're.
How old are your kids now?
My oldest is 21, my middle, she's 17, and my son is 14.
Wow.
Yep.
I got a 11-month-old, so
it's awesome.
You
dude.
got a lot of years in the game. Like, I very much, when I hear that, I feel like, you know, it's my first year in the NBA, and I'm having to talk with Jordan. You know, like somebody who's been around way too long, seen it all, done it all. I have no idea what I'm in for.
Yeah.
You've done it enough times that you're used to it.
Oh, dude. I mean, you never know what you're doing, but when you do love and you care about your kids more than anything else in the world, then you do whatever it takes, and that's selfless living. You know what I mean? Like, me and my wife, or my wife and I, we live for our children, and we want to help raise and build awesome human beings that are going to change the world. And so there's a lot of things in this world that sidetrack you from doing that, you know?
This is kind of like a selfish question just because this is something that I think about a lot, but you ever have to like leave your kid for a long period of time? And was that really difficult for you at times? Like, especially when you're just going on tour for like a month or whatever?
Well, not me, but you can ask my wife that same question. She might have a different answer because, you know, I never thought of it as the luxury that, I mean, I wouldn't say luxury, but yeah, I got to go and play music on tour for a month and a half, 2 months.
Right.
My wife she didn't get to do that. So we know that, okay, that's why when I get home, it wasn't like, here, take your kids. It's just like, I got to do whatever I can to not put all of that pressure on my wife. You know what I mean? So, but I never really thought, I got to get away from my kids. But I'm sure my wife has thought of that plenty of times.
I mean, the inequality in that relationship, in the sense that she's got to stay home for 2 months to take care of the kids while you're off traveling the world and hanging out with all these cool people, and you're being adored on stage every night. You're treated like a god.
Yeah.
At some point in the new mother life cycle, that's definitely got to not sit so well with her.
Yeah. We'll see. That's why I do the best that I can to make it up, you know, when I'm not, or when I am home. You know what I mean? Because she's had to deal with a lot, but that's why she, you know, and that's why we're still together. She's amazing. She's an amazing wife, amazing mother. And I don't know of many ladies and wives that have accomplished that. You know, like I said, I'll be married 25 years. November 2nd, a couple of days ago, it was 31 years when I asked her to be my girlfriend. Wow. So I don't know how many people, but see, she was with me before music. That's why I can see past the facade. That's why I can see past, or that's why I can kind of identify what's real and what's not. You know, it's just your choice whether you believe it or not or follow it or not. At the end of the day, I'd rather have a happy life and do what I'm supposed to do than try to be a rock star 24/7, you know?
100%. What was it like walking around for all those years with those long ass dreadlocks? Was it kind of like, I just imagine being that famous that people must have been coming up and touching them all the time. And
I didn't like when people they, you know, you wouldn't think people would do that, but they would. Yeah. Some people would ask, but some people just, oh my gosh, you know, that was always not cool.
It's like a chick with a big ass. Like people think they
but
can
so
just kind of touch it.
Yeah,
people think
of
some
course
people
you
think they can just touch it. Yeah.
But you can't just do that. I mean, that should be like people's dreads too. You can't just touch.
Yeah.
But no, you know, that was my identity for the longest time.
Right.
You know, and that was, you know, more than the reason why I cut him at that time was just, this has become my identity.
Right.
And that doesn't mean anything to me. So I can still erase this identity and still keep what matters. And so that was my whole process was, you know, was right around the time, like I said, when, you know, things were going on through the band, and it was just like, dude, I don't need to be, I know who I am. You know what I mean? And so I don't need to be, this is not who I want to be, what people want from me.
Right.
I'm trying to be the good husband. I'm trying to be the good daddy. I'm trying to be the good neighbor. I'm trying to be a person that is not going to walk away from my faith when times get hard and, you know, again, not perfect, but I need to hold on to the things that matter to me. And to me at that moment in time, it was stripping me of whatever identity I thought people expected from me.
Right.
Because that's not important, what you expect from me, you know?
Right. Have you battled with your faith, and is it important to you that everybody in the band is still on the same page in regarding their faith? Because it's really hard to imagine that all these guys would still be in the same exact place spiritually all these years later.
It was for the longest time. And I think that's what put a lot of strife between, you know, personal relationships was, for me, I'm loyal, and I believe that God is good, and he's been good to me and my guys, knowing who we are, where we come from. And so it's just me trying to put it in compartmentalize it and not thinking that, oh, you're selling out to your faith if you do this or do that, or your ideals or whatever changes. And for a lot of time, it would be a battle. But now, you know, I've learned to let that stuff go and be like, because before I thought as a band, we all believe the same, and I speak for the band, right? As head of this band. Then I came to a place where it's like, I don't speak for this band, but I'm okay with that. I speak for myself, which is now this season of life that I'm in, that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm not supposed to speak for you anymore. You're supposed to speak for yourself. And now I think that it's allowed me in our relationship to get a lot better. I mean, obviously, and it's just, again, it's just ideas. It can be politics. It can be certain religious views or whatever. I hate the word religion anyway, but certain views on the way things should be or not. Whatever, this or that. It doesn't matter, because that doesn't change us as people. But obviously, you know, if you're sticking a needle in your arm, you know, shooting up heroin, I'm not going to let you do that. You know what I'm saying? So that's a different type of thing. Or if you're ruining your life,
right, then
it's not about whether I think it's right or wrong. You're ruining your life and it's wrong. That's it. But when it comes to differences of opinions, that's a whole different thing. Definitely. So we've learned to and be better for it, I believe.
For sure. What keeps you going in terms of the band? Like, does it sometimes feel, I mean, honestly, the fact that you guys are the same band must make it feel very natural and consistent.
Yeah.
I guess I'm always kind of in shock when I see like a singer of a band who has like, you know, a bunch of 20-year-old guys now as his band and shit. And I'm like, this must feel so crazy for you to sort of be still reliving these old songs and stuff. But with you as like you guys always been together.
No,
I mean, it must
right.
be amazing. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, man. It's you know, again, like I said, that's what makes sense when we play, you know. But you know, even now, even when like there's times where, you know, somebody's had to jump in and fill in for somebody, and it's like, you know, just knowing that they're always coming back to is, you know, in some sense, it's like, it's okay. This is just whatever. This is the season we're in, whether it's stuff we're going through as a band. But yeah, it always makes sense when
Does
we're
anybody else
together.
in the band have side bands that they've been in over the years? Like, do you guys allow that, or is that kind of looked down upon?
We do now. At first, that was that kind of that's part of the reason why, you know, we split up with our guitar player. It was kind of like a, you know, the secret thing. But now we've learned from that where it's not a secret thing, and we learned that we all love making music. So everybody messes with different stuff. You know what I mean? During COVID, I've always wanted to do a reggae project, and so I finished up a lot of stuff during the whole kind of home quarantine gig, and and then now, you know, I've never done anything for myself as far as like personal stuff. It's always been 100% P.O.D. And it still is, but you know, there's a side of me now that just the older I get where I'm like, I have to just get these things out. So you know, I'll be finishing up some solo music and doing some things that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but it doesn't interfere with the band. It's just, I think nowadays we're just not offended by that anymore. You know, it's like we live in a world where it's content. Hey, you need to be able to express yourself and get things out and do things that make you happy. And, you know, so we've learned that.
For sure. That's dope. Yeah, man, honestly, it's just really cool to see you like still in a very good place and just like, you know, being motivated to keep this thing going, because it's pretty remarkable that you guys are still a band after all these years. And I mean, I don't know. I'm also kind of just in awe of the contribution, like just in the sense of like that rap rock fusion that I still feel like maybe one day will be like a really big consistent cultural phenomenon. But you guys had like a very, very important contribution to that. So I feel like even if maybe the hip hop audience doesn't immediately understand, maybe over time, hopefully this interview gives them a glimpse into that connection. Yeah,
for sure, man. I try to mess with everything that's coming out, and I don't want to be that old guy now that's like, oh, this music sucks. Right. And I'm very open-minded to that. But I really do appreciate that era and time when it's like, even those bands, it was like they didn't sound the same. I mean, like Korn didn't sound like Limp Bizkit, you know what I mean? Or we didn't sound like Korn. We obviously we inspire and influence, and we take all that stuff, but everybody was still pretty much an individual, and it really was about your music and making your mark. Where I see a lot of stuff we talked about that earlier. Like, if you have the same writers that are writing for pop artists and then writing for rock and roll artists too, where's the like? It's diluting too fast and too quick. You know, when rock and roll, or even, you know, one point was this rebellion music, hip hop, the same thing, rebellion music. There were certain things that you stood on your own, and now it's just, there's such a blurred line with all of it, and it's all become so Hollywood that it is rare when you find that person, you're like, no, this dude or this lady is tight.
I mean, I think about this a lot, but I compare, like, you know, skateboarding and rock or rap, you know, in the sense of, like, there were all these years. I'm a BMX dude, so I think about it in BMX terms, but skateboarding as well, where, like, there's all these years throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s where people are really, like, figuring out how skateboarding works. What are all these tricks? What are all these grinds? How do we put them together, et cetera, et cetera. And now when you look at skateboarding, it's like there's tons of creative people out there. But the ground rules of what this is have been essentially, you know, set in place. And people are sort of elaborating and building upon that. And that is kind of like the thing that is fascinating about rock music or rap even, is that, like, in the 80s, in the 90s, you got to see these people figuring it out, like how the fuck this is going to work. Like, what is music going to sound like? And now a lot of times it just really feels like, you know, like I listened to like in the 80s and 90s, like fucking, there's like a lot of metal that was like, and hardcore that was produced really badly. That's one thing that when you listen to hardcore metal now, it's like, oh my God, the engineering and the production is so good. And then you listen to like a black metal band from the 90s and you're like, Jesus Christ. Like, there's so much for them to figure out that they were still working on. And I just find that so shocking. You know, it's like they figured out how metal works now. And people, so it's much harder for somebody to really go outside of that.
It's a formula.
To do something new. And but that is the thing that will get everybody excited when it does happen, you know?
No, you're absolutely right, dude. It's become such a formula. And it's just, I don't know, there's hope, because when you, like I say, when you find someone who's dope, you're like, okay, there's hope that it's still not gone. Right. But then there's a lot of stuff in all genres where you're like, this is just bad. Yeah. But I always equate it the same way. Like, I'm a foodie. I love good food. I don't really eat much fast food, except if I do, it's gonna be like In-N-Out Burger or Chick-fil-A, right?
Some good stuff,
in my taco spot. But McDonald's is McDonald's for a reason. And you know it's bad for you. You know it's gonna kill you. You know it's garbage. It's garbage, but you like your McDonald's. Not everybody has the taste for not everybody's a foodie. Not everybody has. They don't want the gourmet burger. They want a crappy. And I'm not saying it's crappy, because I remember my share.
Consistent, simple, fast. I mean, there's a lot of attributes that they do well in, even though there's also the stuff. The thing about McDonald's is that it wouldn't exist if everybody wasn't fucking buying it. Exactly. Apparently, McDonald's, if nothing else, they're selling you what you want. Apparently, because they're selling the most shit.
Shame on what you like. Yeah. And shame on what you're listening to, because they exist for a reason. But now I'm the old guy saying that. So that's why, there's hope, but at the same time, it's we're losing that, where, like I said, this kind of authenticity where you're inspired by certain people and you take that with you. But now, we're coming, if we're not at that line, or even the next few years, but I hear rappers all the time where they're like, there's just no respect, where it's like, for someone to even say that, who's Biggie Smalls or who's Tupac or even, Rakim, you know what I mean? Like, you're right. Or like, even to not just pay respect, like we've just lost that. We've just lost that.
Yeah, that's one thing I hate with the new generation, is that it's so easy to go learn about everything, and so many of them just don't have any interest. And it's like, if you love rap music,
the foundations,
maybe Jay-Z is not going to become your favorite rapper.
That's okay.
But he came before you, and there's certainly a lot you could learn from his trajectory, because there's a lot you can learn from anyone. Like, and then there's mistakes that you won't have to repeat, etc. I wish that the younger, and I'm always surprised when I have a younger guest on who clearly has done the work to actually learn about a lot of the greats that came before him, and that a lot of times that makes me feel like, okay, you're gonna win. Yeah.
Or I'm gonna pay more attention to you because I feel like you're legit.
Yeah. Having that kind of mindset not wanting to make the mistakes yourself and wanting to learn from
Right.
others, I think is a huge sign of success.
I think sometimes you just get caught up in, even now, like, why would you pay respect to one of the greatest rappers in the world over here, but if he's not relevant today, you know what I mean, or whatever, now he's just lives in Queens, you know, still, and he's just living.
Right.
You don't have to. You're better than him because you got more money than him,
You're out here.
or you're out here, or you got 2 million people on Instagram and he doesn't. So that just says who you think you are. But we live in to me that don't mean.
Weird
nothing.
world we live in. When you are driving around by yourself, what are you most likely to be listening to these days?
If I'm just driving around, mostly it's just still reggae music. My playlist just makes me feel good. I try to keep up with like, you know, real root stuff and Jamaican roots. I mean, the California reggae scene is again, I'm the old guy, you know what I mean? I respect a lot of the people that are doing it, and but I'm just a roots guy, you know what I mean? So it's hard to. There's still new roots guys coming up. You're like, okay, this I can get with this, but there's certain scenes that I don't vibe with. But I'll never get old of reggae music, or it just depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm gonna go run or something, you know, I'm still a big Deftones fan, still a big Rage fan, you know.
Nice.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, man. Thanks a ton for coming on the show, and it was super fascinating to learn about you. And I hope a lot of other people get the same effect. I know we're gonna have a lot of rap fans that maybe are not like hardcore P.O.D. fans, but are like, oh fuck, I was listening to them when I was 8, 9, 10 years old.
You didn't even know it.
and hopefully some of them will sign up for this history lesson.
For sure, man.
It's important shit. For sure.
We all help teach each other.
For sure. Well, I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks again.
Thanks, man.
No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. Check us out on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, all that shit, Patreon, OnlyFans, etc. NoJumper.com if you want to support. Like, comment, subscribe. I did the order wrong on that, but fuck it. Appreciate y'all.